Whether we like it or not, Ebenezer Scrooge has become something of a caricature in pop culture. Even though a lot of famous portrayals of him don't break into caricature, like Alistair Sim and George C. Scott, his traits get exaggerated and played for comedy regularly in advertisements and other Christmas media. When someone is called a Scrooge, we all know what we're picturing. An actor taking on the role of Ebenezer Scrooge knows they need to find a new and fresh way into the character. However, when a character is simply inspired by Scrooge, there's less baggage attached to the role. Plenty of modernized Christmas carols get to create Scrooge-like characters that aren't as intimidating for the actor to take on, and oftentimes they work quite well. It's one of the most influential books ever written. Even if you've never read Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, you are familiar with it. My name is Colin Murr, and I've loved this story for as long as I can remember. I'm going to be looking at every film and TV adaptation of A Christmas Carol I can, because I love the story that much. Join me this season as I go from Mickey Mouse to the Muppets on Scrooge, A Christmas Carol podcast. Season 2, Episode 5, The Other Modern Christmas Carol of the 80s. One thing that even I have found surprising about this podcast is how partial I've been to the various modernized Scrooges. We've had Daniel Grudge in Carol for Another Christmas, Benedict Slade in An American Christmas Carol, and Cyrus Flint in Skinflint, A Country Christmas Carol. Regardless of my feelings towards those adaptations overall, I've praised the Scrooge character and performance in each. Even in something like Skinflint, which is pretty underwhelming, I really liked how they modernized Scrooge for the time and place. Today, we're looking at a TV special that also modernizes Scrooge for another time and place, John Grin's Christmas. Unfortunately, the Christmas Carol adaptations tend to be pretty white. The only people of color we've seen have been in updated versions of the tale, and even then, it's a pretty low number. We had Percy Rodriguez and Barbara Ann Teer in Carol for Another Christmas, and Dorian Harewood and Arlene Duncan in An American Christmas Carol, and of course Sesame Street was always diverse, but it's still a disappointingly low number. John Grin's Christmas aired on ABC in 1986, and every single actor who speaks a line is black. It's pretty cool to see. The special stars Robert Guillame, who also directs. He plays the title character of John Grin, an executive at a toy company in the present day. Guillaume was an acclaimed actor of film, stage, and TV, but this is surprisingly his only directorial effort. There's actually a very funny moment in hindsight when John Grin meets the first ghost.
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Ghost?
Yes.
And I'm Cyrano de Bergerac.
Guillaume would go on to play Cyrano in Cyrano the Musical 7 years later. Like with the previous modernized Scrooges I named, I like the characterization of John Grin and the performance Guillaume gives. It's very subtle, and I was honestly a little bit underwhelmed at first, but started to see what he was doing with the character and really came to appreciate it. Grin is a cold businessman like Scrooge, and it seems like Guillaume really zeroes in on the loneliness aspect of the Scrooge character, which is something that George C. Scott also mentioned doing. Grin is on edge for the entirety of the opening scenes, but he barely raises his voice, which only makes him more interesting. He seems so world-weary and just done with everything.
Mr. Oliver, I've told you 1,000 times, leave the thermostat alone.
But Mr. Grant...
No buts, Mr. Oliver.
I love to see the changes in a subtle portrayal of Scrooge like this. The actors who play it big go for brash anger at the beginning and unbridled joy at the end. But the ones who play it subtler do a better job of showing the change internally. You can read so much from a smile or a line delivery, as opposed to dancing in circles. In that way, Guillaume's transformation is much more like Sterling Hayden in Carol for Another Christmas, as there isn't a big, exuberant scene at the end, but rather an inner happiness and joy that we know has taken hold. There are some weird moments for the Grin character, such as adapting Bah Humbug into a sarcastic
Fa la 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 la.
which you just can't make sound natural. Guillaume does his best, but it just doesn't work. There's also a scene where he screams that he has money, and honestly, I don't know what he's going for. I would love to say I don't blame the actor, but he was in fact also the director, so yeah, it's probably his fault.
I have money.
You have no friends.
I have money.
No one will mourn your passing.
I have money!
That said, these are small moments in what is otherwise a very good performance. So, we've got a solid lead performance and a great, fresh idea for a new take on A Christmas Carol. Does it lead to an underrated classic? Not really, unfortunately. But there's still a lot to like here. This thing does not have much in the way of a visual style. There is one major exception that we'll get to, where they seemingly dumped all their visual creativity into one scene, but most of this film is pretty uninteresting to look at, and the script, for the most part, isn't really interesting enough to make up for it. For example, I've never seen an adaptation of A Christmas Carol start as underwhelmingly as this. For what it's worth, just quick note, this thing's an hour with commercials, but I'm gonna keep calling it a TV movie because it's not related to existing media. It's not a variety show. Even though it's only an hour long, it's a movie. It just starts with Grin telling someone from the children's hospital to come in, and he doesn't want to donate toys. It just begins. Grin's late partner, Mr. Kramer, had given away rejected, unsellable toys for free, which Grin says was because Kramer had a spot on city council and wanted to lock up votes. Kramer's kind of the Marley character here, but we don't ever meet him, so it's much more like the Marley of Carol for Another Christmas, who hangs over the thing but is never an on-screen character who talks. We soon meet the character of Rocky, a poor teenager who is insecure about not being able to buy his mother a nice gift. He's played by a pre-Fresh Prince Alfonso Ribeiro, and while it's not a one-to-one character, he has elements of both Fred and Tiny Tim, as he's a caring young man whom the Scrooge figure needs to help out. Another man he meets, played by Robert O'Ree, encourages Rocky to go through Mr. Grin's trash, but then Grin comes out and says they have to even pay for that. O'Ree is giving a very broad and strange performance here, and I can't tell if he's trying to play this character a certain way that I'm missing, or it's just not a very good performance.
You know, Rocky, you don't always have to have money to celebrate Christmas.
Well, of course you'd think that.
Did you ever think of making something with your hands?
Grin turns Rocky down for a job since he's still in school, but he does seem to genuinely offer that he'll reconsider when Rocky's out of school. I think this humanizes Grin a bit at least. It's kind of like giving Cratchit the day off in the book. He's not going above and beyond, but he is still a human being. The Bob Cratchit character is Grin's employee Sam Oliver, played by Robert Guillame's son Kevin Guillame. A lot of the opening scenes are very much in line with the book, right down to Sam turning up the thermostat, only for Grin to turn it back down. Grin also turns down a charity worker on the street, and I really like their brief interaction.
Pardon me, sir?
I gave to the girl down the block.
Impossible. I'm the only person working the block.
That's what you think, my dear. They're all over the place. They're like flies from one end of the block to the other. One giant refrain. Gimme, gimme, gimme.
We're only trying to raise money for the hungry and the homeless.
Again? What do these people do with all the money we give them?
Dear sir, a simple no would have done it.
No.
Sadly, not all of the actors here are credited to the character they play, but going off IMDb and the pictures I found, I think she's played by Joanne Brooks. If I'm wrong, please forgive me. Anyway, she's really believable as this overworked but caring charity worker who has no time for Grin's nonsense. And she and Guillaume have a really good chemistry. I know it's just a brief little moment, but I really appreciate it. When Grin gets home, he finds that his door is unlocked. It's a bit of a modern touch on the Marley on the door knocker scene, which unsettles Grin just a little bit. When he goes to bed, he hears carolers outside and yells out his window, only for them to disappear. All of these things feel natural for the story, while still honoring the book. I'm quite impressed. Like I said, there's not a Marley haunting in this version, so we jump right into the Ghost of Christmas Past. There's a really interesting choice made here, in that most of the performances in this are naturalistic and grounded, but the ghosts are all heightened and theatrical. It makes them feel even more otherworldly, and it also might be suggesting that these are people Grin would judge in real life, since he's such a serious-minded businessman. It's pretty smart. The Ghost of Christmas Past is an undertaker, played by the great character actor Roscoe Lee Brown.
To put it bluntly, John Grin, most people your age have already shown more concern for their immortal souls.
Uh-huh. I knew it. You're an undertaker.
Used to be.
Well, now you have me totally confused.
That's not surprising.
His voice and his outfit feel like they're from the early 20th century, which of course really works. It's usually Christmas yet to come who brings death to mind, so this is a nice twist. The first scene we see of Grin's past is one of the most tragic in any version we've seen yet. In An American Christmas Carol, we learned that Benedict Slade was an orphan, but his on-screen story started after his parents had died. Now, here John Grin is brought up in what is at least a middle-class family. One year during Christmas, there was an electrical fire which led to the death of Grin's parents and sister. He tried to save all of them, but he was unsuccessful, and he has a hefty dose of survivor's guilt from the incident. It's all shown in silence as Grin and the ghost talk over it, which really works.
For some reason, I thought my sister had gotten out. So I went outside to find her, and when she wasn't there, tried to get back in, but the fireman wouldn't let me.
You're very brave, John. And you're on the right track. You're willing to risk your life to save someone else's.
Yeah, but I still couldn't save them.
It also gives Grin a different motivation than Scrooge for hating Christmas. It's a heartbreaking scene, and it also gives him an interesting change of class as well, because he goes from, again, middle class to rich, to orphan, to rich again, which is a different arc than we've ever seen in a Scrooge before, which is fascinating. It's so good, and I just can't believe what follows it. Grin ends up in an orphanage, makes perfect sense, but any emotion we should be feeling is absolutely ruined by the film's baffling choice to give the orphanage a sitcom theme song. I'm not kidding. Just a few moments ago, a boy's childhood was dying in one horrific accident, and now we're getting a montage of activities over this song.
I lost everything that night.
Yes, it would seem so. Let us see what you found here.
Can't you just see the actors' names appearing as this music plays? Did they think John Grin's Christmas was going to get the Grin Home Orphanage spin-off sitcom coming to ABC this fall? It's also the only song in the whole film outside of traditional Christmas carols, which makes this even more out of place. We learned that Grin was taken under the wing of someone and finally left the orphanage, although it seems to be deliberately left unclear if he was adopted. The ghost says he was, but Grin insists that he was just apprenticed by this man because he appreciated Grin's skills. This is a nice little ambiguity, and since we don't ever see any more from the man who took Grin in, we're left to interpret it for ourselves. Now, there is a scene in the book where the ghost gets something wrong and Scrooge corrects them. The ghost says that Fan had children, and Scrooge says it was just one child. That doesn't seem to be the case here, and the ghost does not correct himself. I think it's most likely just two viewpoints on the same situation, and it tells us a lot about Grin. He wants to be valued for his work, and with his family gone, he doesn't have much place for love. Sadly, there is a bit of an on-the-nose exchange where he tells us that too, but it's alright.
But you forgot one thing.
What's that?
You forgot how to love.
Didn't seem to be much need for it once I lost my family.
I can understand how it might seem that way. But don't you think that love makes life worth living?
Money makes life worth living.
Sure, Grin is directly inspired by Scrooge, and he has more than a little Benedict Slade too, but I really like the way they develop him into his own character. The final scene of Christmas Past involves Grin firing a union rep, played by Philip Aiken, over a dispute over workers' pay. Even if Grin has been softening a bit, this has him very defensive, especially because, as we later learn, it's just happened. Which I think is a little confusing, but it's not that big of a deal. Want even more Scrooge, A Christmas Carol podcast? Just go to my Patreon at patreon.com/Scrooge, A Christmas Carol podcast, where for just $5 a month, you can get a bonus episode every month of the year. There, I cover various TV shows versions of A Christmas Carol. For $10 a month, you can even vote on what episode I do next. Additionally, for just $1 a month, you can get all episodes 24 hours early. Again, just go to patreon.com/Scrooge, A Christmas Carol podcast, or follow the link in the description. The Ghost of Christmas Present is casual and cool, and he stands too close to Grin and uses too much slang for him. Grin snarks that he's a jazz musician, but this seems to be an insult and not actually a fact.
You and I are tied together, blood. It's that time again.
I'm not going anywhere.
Let's get in the wind.
The ghost is played by Ted Lange, who was just wrapping up his time on the Love Boat in 1986. The first present scene takes place in the orphanage that Grin refused to give free toys to, and it features some great physical acting by Guillame. He can be cocky and confident when he's defending his business skills, but when he has to come face to face with the children he denied toys to, he can't stop squirming. It's a great way to open him up a little. We get a scene at the Olivers, this movie's version of the Cratchits, and we get to meet Mrs. Oliver, played wonderfully by Candy Ann Brown. Much like the Mrs. Cratchit of the book, she loves her husband and has no time for his boss. Like Bob, Sam half-heartedly defends his boss, but she's not having it, and it's very satisfying.
Hi, sweetie. How you doing? I got here as soon as I could. Grin had me finish some figures, you know.
Yeah, I'd like to finish him.
Let's not get into that again now.
Well, he takes your design for the ballerina doll, gives you nothing for it, and makes you work Christmas Eve.
Sweetheart, that's my job. I signed on at a certain salary. He doesn't have to give me anything extra.
Well, he doesn't have to, but he could.
Again, I like that this scene goes out of its way to show that Grin is technically not doing anything illegal. Sam gave him an idea for a doll, but didn't get credit for it. But he admits that Grin didn't have to give him credit or extra money, and his wife has to agree with that, wrong as it may seem. Okay, maybe it's not really the honest businessman of the book, but it's still showing that Grin is following the law. This is followed by a really sweet scene where Rocky is trying to pick out a gift for his mother at an antique shop, but he doesn't have any money. He asks the owner if he can do some work for her and get a gift in return, and all she asks him to do is empty a trash can. There's talk of more work later, but we get the idea she's not going to hold him to it. I really love this scene, because it emphasizes the community aspect of A Christmas Carol. They're both willing to lift each other up and make life easier for the other, regardless of how much money they have. Even Grin is sincerely touched by it, and it softens him considerably. As you can tell, there's a lot to like about John Grin's Christmas, but it is lacking in style. So it's a pleasant surprise when the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come shows up, and the movie decides it's suddenly going to be very stylistic. The ghost is played by Jeffrey Holder, who towers over Grin, in addition to taunting him. It does lead to this very bizarre moment.
I have money!
What is with that scream? However, we then get the aforementioned style as Grin and the ghost sit in the theater watching Grin's death play out on stage. The scene on the stage feels like something out of a gangster movie with jazz music playing and Rocky now dressed like a 30s movie gangster. There's even a card game in the corner. Various people walk by Grin's bedside and express contempt or carelessness towards his death. It's heavily stylized and clearly not meant to be anything resembling reality, but the emotion is real, and that's why it works so well.
So how is he?
I don't think he gonna make it, baby.
Rocky went bad. You could have made a difference.
How can I be responsible for everybody in the world?
All he needed was a job. A job.
What a shame. Cut down at the prime of life.
It's something fresh and different, and I just wish there was more of it in this movie. Plus, it shows that Grin, as a rich man, needs to be right at the center of his community helping people. Truly great scene. Guillaume plays the transformation quite well, outside of those few awkward moments I've mentioned, and he's very warm and charming on Christmas morning. I love the decision to play the scenes where he's getting toys for the orphanage without dialogue, with just the score playing. It makes me think of doing good things quietly and not for the sake of showing off. He does all the things you'd expect, like giving Sam a raise and a promotion, having Sam rehire the union rep, and helping out Rocky and his mom. However, there's also a lengthy scene in church, which closes out the movie. It's mentioned in passing in the book that Scrooge goes to church, but we get about 5 minutes of it here. However, it doesn't suddenly pivot to being a preachy movie or something. Pretty much all of the characters we've met in the present day are at church, and by attending, Grin is re entering his community. He's closed himself off for so long, and now he wants to be a part of these people's lives again. It's a really touching moment. Look, like I said at the beginning, John Grin's Christmas is sadly not a lost masterpiece or anything. It's often pretty flat, and there are some odd moments that don't quite work. That said, there is a lot of good stuff here, and I think it should be seen more. Robert Guillaume is a great modern day Scrooge figure, and the Christmas yet to come scene is worth the price of admission alone. There are some fresh spins on things here, and I wish Guillaume had been given more time and money for this, because I get the feeling he could have given us something at least on par with An American Christmas Carol. Still, I recommend John Grin's Christmas. It understands the book's themes and messages, with a heavy focus on poverty and community. John Grin needs to help those around him, and he's happy to properly join society at the end. He may have lost his family as a child, but he has people around him who want to love and support him. That's why the ending works so well. And I really love that the ending takes its time. The whole thing is only 49 minutes long, but it is paced quite well, which is rare for shorter versions. Next week, I'm going to be looking at a much more famous modernization of A Christmas Carol, Scrooged from 1988. Probably the most famous modern take on A Christmas Carol. So much different than the very, very obscure one I looked at this week. So stay tuned next week for that, and stay tuned on this episode for a few more thoughts on John Grin's Christmas. Thank you for listening to Scrooge, A Christmas Carol podcast. So that is John Grin's Christmas, the Robert Guillaume directed and starring film from the 1980s. Yeah, I knew absolutely nothing about this going in except that it existed. And I'll admit it took a bit for me to kind of get it. I was kind of half watching it a bit, and I wanted to start it over and really try to see what it was going for. Because, yeah, it does not start well. It starts out so underwhelmingly. It's just, hey, come in, let's talk. Just no flair at all. And that really set me off on the wrong foot because there is a lot that this is doing well. There is a lot to admire here, and there's some really good artistry, especially in that Christmas Yet to Come scene. So I had to give it another fair chance because it had that opening few scenes, and they just really put a bad taste in my mouth for something pretty boring. Which thankfully overall this isn't. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect. Uh, but the stuff that's good, it's really good. Robert Guillaume is a really good modern Scrooge figure. One of the best we've had, both in terms of modernized and just he's up there with the best Scrooges we've had. Not top of the list, but far above many, many Scrooges we've had. He gives a really strong performance here. And his transformation is very sweet, very believable, very nuanced. He is a very underplayed character in the right way. I mean, underplayed as, he's subtle, not underplayed as in he should play the role more or bigger. He really wants to do a very specific kind of self-serious, subtle, subdued kind of man. And that can be tough when you have to have the whole thing be a character transformation because you can't do any big moments. You have to do small moments. George C. Scott does that really well, obviously. You know my favorite version. You know George C. Scott's my favorite because he does those so well. He does those little moments so well. And Alistair Sim, despite being famous for his big moments, he has that dancing around scene at the end. Alistair Sim does those little moments really well. The bit at the end when he says, "I don't deserve to be so happy," and we see how happy he is. That's the transformation for me, not the dancing around scene. The dancing around scene is fine. Nothing against that scene. But when Alistair Sim has that look of contentment at the end, or when George C. Scott asks God's forgiveness for the time he's missed, that's what I'm looking for in a really good Scrooge. That's the kind of Scrooge I like best, is you know them the change has actually taken hold. And that's the Scrooge of the book to me too, is this subtle internal change, not this big outward over the top change in the same way. There are moments in the book where you could read it either way, by all means. He's saying Merry Christmas to everyone on the streets. That's very much the outward signs of a change. But the ending makes it clear it's inward and it's outward, and it's that inward change that really matters. And that's why I like Scott and Sim and Guillaume here. Henry Winkler does the same thing in An American Christmas Carol, and that's why he's so great in that. Sterling Hayden, very subtle in Carol for Another Christmas. His Christmas morning is just, he goes from being cold but never brash, really, even though it's Sterling Hayden who was known for being brash. He's really not that brash. He has a couple moments for the most part. He's just cold. And he's still getting there at the end of Carol for Another Christmas. He's gotten better and he has the warmth coming out, but it's not all the way there yet, which I appreciate. That's why I like these modernizations so much because you get to create a new character who's inspired by Scrooge, but yet is not Scrooge. So you don't feel beholden to these things you think about with Ebenezer Scrooge specifically. So we've had so many good takes on Scrooge in modernizations, even Hoyt Axton in Skinflint, which, like I said, not a good adaptation, not a great movie, but a very good performance. And it's very subtle. He really understands the character he was playing, Cyrus Flint, in that one, who's a banker. And we see that change in him on the Christmas morning scenes. So sweet and endearing. So yeah, when I think of the best Scrooge transformations, you'll note that a lot of the ones I like best aren't the direct adaptations, which is interesting. Now, I also do like, I haven't mentioned him yet, but the very first one I talked about, 1935, I think Seymour Hicks' Christmas morning scenes are really, really well done. Other parts of his performance, hit and miss. That's a very interesting movie, Scrooge 1935. But the Christmas morning transformation, his performance in those scenes, very strong. So there are a lot of transformations I'll point out as strong, but there are others that are just way too silly, and it's often in direct adaptations, unfortunately. And I don't know if it's because they feel they have to like top what Alistair Sim was doing, or they just want to break out now that they're suddenly playing their reformed Scrooge. I'm not sure because again, and there are people who love those kinds of transformation scenes too. I'm not saying it's a right or wrong. It's just for me, I'm looking for those more subtle acting moments. It's just what I prefer in a Scrooge. So that's why I'm partial to so many Scrooges in these modern versions. So yes, if you want to check out John Grin's Christmas, do it for that Robert Guillaume performance first and foremost because it's really good. And second of all, obviously for the Christmas Yet to Come sequence, which is unlike anything we've seen yet, which is great. If in going through all these Christmas carols, if there's a version that can give me something I haven't seen yet, that's wonderful. Something new and fresh, still in line with the book, but that feels like something I haven't seen before and I've seen a lot. I love it. That's great. Give me that. I love finding surprises in these. We go back to the Shower of Stars Frederick March version, which is like, okay, here's another 50s TV version. What you got? And it gave me my favorite take on the Jacob Marley scene. I was never expecting that. I've seen countless Jacob Marley scenes, and that one just blew me away, even though I don't love that version overall. Or, Skinflint, A Country Christmas Carol. It has a musical number that I think is phenomenal. Don't love the movie overall. So, give me one thing I can hold on to that I can point to and say, you gave us that. And it's a memorable, great scene in a version of A Christmas Carol. That's what I love about this, because you can find stuff like that. And the Christmas Yet to Come portion of John Grin's Christmas, when they're on the stage and the jazz music is playing and they're like movie gangsters and he's on the bed in the middle. It's haunting and it's funny and it's slick and oh man, something else. Really a really interesting choice. And yeah, even if this isn't something you want to check out, just find it and skip to the Christmas yet to come portion because it's really cool how they did that. And I wish that sense of style had permeated this whole thing. There's other kind of stylistic moments that I think work. I mentioned some of those choices in the episode here. I like that the tragedy of John Grin's childhood happens in silence and we'd hear it in voiceover as the music plays. That's a good choice. I like that the good deeds on Christmas morning, same deal. Not any voiceover that time, just silence and music playing over it. Do your good deeds quietly. But yeah, there are just other moments that aren't interesting visually, and it's a shame. So don't know if it was a budget thing, don't know if it was a time thing. Who knows why some of this is really stylish and the rest is pretty dull and pedestrian. I don't know. It's a TV movie, it's an hour long, it's the 80s. This could have been something else perhaps with more money and time, I can't say. I think there's some interesting vision here and there are interesting choices made. A lot of really good performances. Guillaume, of course, first and foremost, very, very good performance. All the ghosts I like, they're all very theatrical, which is such an interesting contrast to the very self-serious Grin. I particularly like Roscoe Lee Brown. That's a really fun performance as this old-timey Undertaker. Yeah, just the one you'd expect to be Christmas yet to come, but he's actually Christmas past. That's fun. He has some enjoyably snarky moments, and yeah, he's just a great Ghost of Christmas Past. Probably one of my favorite Ghosts of Christmas Past. Although this, I will say, the '80s in general, I think gives me a lot of my favorite Ghosts of Christmas Past. The one from Christmas Carol with George C. Scott, Angela Pleasance, and the one from next week to spoil a little bit, I loved and Scrooged as well. So we're getting a run of some of my favorite Ghosts of Christmas Past. And The Ghost of Christmas Past is one where, again, unless you're going to do it like the book, which almost never, you can really just do your own thing. So the more creative, the better in my mind, especially in these modernized adaptations. Go all out. Make it an Undertaker, make it a wild cab driver, make it the one we get in An American Christmas Carol, the bookseller. Make it something interesting if you're not going to do the book one, which again is nearly impossible. So yeah, that's fun. And like I said, I really like the charity worker scene of this. It's probably not even a minute long. I don't know. She just felt very real to me, and it would have been nice to see more of her because she just gets that brief scene with him. But it works. It's a very nice scene. So I'm glad they included that. And this one, overall, the message is very strong, which is why you can tell I'm pretty partial to versions that even if there are flaws, they get the message right. John Grin's Christmas absolutely gets the message of A Christmas Carol. Helping those in need, helping your community. If you have means, you need to help those in your reach in your community. And that's what that whole scene at the Yet to Come is about, obviously. He's surrounded by members of community and he's done nothing for them. So yeah, this really focuses on that, like the scene where Rocky is in the store and the store owner doesn't make him really do any work. She just wants to help him out and he's willing to help her out if he needs to as well. It's a really nice sense of community. And then the fact that they're all in church together at the end, I love that. Really nails the community aspect of this, which An American Christmas Carol also did marvelously. So, yeah, I'm going to be partial to any version that's really nailing the message, even if there are other flaws. So, this one and An American Christmas Carol, which doesn't have many flaws at all, I'm just comparing the two in terms of how they get the message right. They both really get it. So, yeah, John Grin's Christmas, there is a lot to like here. It's not perfect, but if it interests you, check it out. It's worth your time. If you're a fan of Robert Guillaume, which I'm sure a lot of people are because he was a great, great actor, you should check it out. It's just an hour long with commercials, so it's not even an hour long. I'm not sure if it ever re-aired. I know it never got released on home media, so it is kind of like Skinflint in that way. Very little obscure rarity from the '80s, and it shouldn't be. It should be a little better known. Not an all-time classic, but worth your watch. So, next week we are talking about, as I said, a much more famous version, Scrooged from 1988 with Bill Murray. So, even if you know this movie front and back, you might not know the history. And the history of Scrooged is actually something I found really interesting in researching and writing the episode. So, I'm going to talk a bit about that next week. I don't have the whole story, obviously. It's not going to be the main focus of the episode or anything. But I'm going to go into the history of Scrooged because it was kind of a long and arduous process, and I hope you'll find it interesting because I know I did, in addition to the episode itself. So, thank you for listening to Scrooge, a Christmas Carol podcast. Scrooge, a Christmas Carol podcast is written, edited, and hosted by Colin Murr. Theme music is Christmas Day by TRG Banks. Clips in this episode are from John Grin's Christmas. Leaving a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, as well as liking, commenting, and subscribing on YouTube will be a big help to me. You can also back me on Patreon for early episodes, bonus episodes, and the right to vote in polls. Link is in the description. I'll be back next Wednesday with another episode of Scrooge, a Christmas Carol podcast. Until then, make sure to live in the past, the present, and the future, and ensure that the spirits of all three strive within you.